Hello my fellow crafters. Last week we wrapped this ferricite with a very simple frame, and this week we're going to wrap this red imperial jasper. This is a teardrop cabochon and it is about 1 3/4 inches long and about 1 inch wide with only about 1/8 of an inch thick. Okay, for our frame we'll be using this 18 gauge dead soft copper wire, and for the weaving wire I'm going to use a 26 gauge dead soft copper wire. Now to get started we need to know, or we need to have a reference as to the length of our frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some painter's tape and I'm just going to wrap it around the perimeter of the stone, trying to keep it as level as possible. And then I'll trim off the top here. And then the only thing I'm going to do is put that there on my work surface so that I can use that for reference instead of having to use the stone back and forth. So first things first, we get our 2 pieces of base wire, and the base wire that I am going to use for the frame and the bail is going to be about 6 inches longer on both sides of the tape. And you can go with a little bit shorter or a little bit longer depending on what you prefer. I like to have that longer length so that I have enough that I can make a decent sized bail and then still have enough left over that I can use the remainder for not only securing it but for a little bit of decoration. And then for the part of the wire that's going to sit in the front, we'll only need about 2 to 4 inches on both sides of that tape. I'll go with 4 because, as mentioned, I like having that extra. This is kind of a slippery stone, so I need to make sure that I have a little extra wire to add flourish on both sides that also acts as a stabilizer, just to be on the safe side. Now the weave that I'm going to be using for this is a very simple figure 8 weave, and I'll show you briefly how to do this weave, and if you need a little bit more of a refresher, I do have a video that I'll be linking in the description that you can refer back to. Now, I pulled out about 6 feet of this 26 gauge wire, and I'm just going to allow the spool to sit on my lap, and then I'm going to work from this point out to the point that I cut. And I'll start with the longest wire down in the center of the wire, and I'll put my weaving wire on top of that base wire and I'll wrap it around 7 times. And make sure that those coils are nice and tight with each other and nice and even, and they're not overlapping each other. Now to bring in the next wire, I'm going to put this over top of that weaving wire and make sure that I'm near the center. It doesn't have to be dead center, but pretty close to it. And then I'm going to bring my stone up and I'm going to put this in between the wires to make sure that I have it exactly where I need it to be. I want the stone to be able to sit in between those 2 wires without having too much room to wiggle around, but not so tight that I won't be able to let it sit within that groove, which that's about right there. And then I'll take that wire that's behind this wire and I'll bring it up and over and around that wire. Check my stone one more time. I did make that a little bit tight, so I'm going to loosen that up just a tiny bit. This does take a little bit of practice and a little bit of finesse, but as long as you're patient with yourself and take time to just check over your work, you'll be just fine. And then you're going to go around this the same 7 times as you went the other one. Now you can do 5 if you want, you know, or a little less or a little bit more. It's completely up to you. I'm going to go with 7. 1, 2, 3. Now ideally you would want to use a ring clamp to kind of hold these into place, but because I'm starting halfway up the wire, it would actually not be very advantageous for me. All right, so then you come back down and behind that bottom wire there and bring it up over and then down in between, and you're going to do your 7 coils again. So there's 2. And make sure that they're nice and tight up against each other. Check your stone and keep on going. So you're going to go back over to the other side. So you're going to go behind that top wire there and up over it, and then you're going to go around that 7 times. And then go back behind that bottom wire again and up over it around 7 times. The absolute hardest part about making the frame for this is making sure that you have the right tension and you've got that right distance so it's not all like kind of wavy on the frame. You want it to be a nice smooth look to it. And not only does it look nice, but it also helps to make sure that it's going to hold the stone along all angles and not just like tight in one spot, too big on another. You just want to keep that consistency as much as possible. Now the reason why I'm starting halfway down the wire instead of going from one end to the other is so that it's a little bit easier to keep the gauge. It's a little easier to not get this all tangled up and everything. And it also helps me to ensure that I have enough of the weaving wire. I mean, if you really want to work from one end to the other, you can. It's not an issue. I just personally prefer working halfway down. And it may seem confusing first because then you still have to do this half, but I'll show you how to finish the other half once I get halfway through this one. All right, so you just want to keep doing that. And then, so like right here, I'm right here now, about right there. And then we want to come down to this point here. So I'm going to keep working on this. And then I'll meet you when I get back to here. So if you want to pause the video to catch up to this point, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I'm about to the halfway point right here. So I am going to bring my weaving wire back to the bail wire and wrap it around one time as if I'm going to start that figure eight, but I'm not actually going to start it. I'm just going to leave that wire there. And I'm not going to cut this off yet. I only have about a foot left, but I'm going to leave that so that I have it for lashing things in or anything else like that that I may need. So now the only thing I have to do to get the other half done is to flip this over. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut the weaving wire off of the spool so the spool's not in my way and I'm not getting tangled up. And this time, I think I'm going to give myself about 9 foot of weaving wire because the 6 was not enough for me to do the bail with, like the frame and the bail. And I want to have enough for the frame and the bail so I don't have to add any in. If I do have to add any in, it's not that big a deal. I just prefer not to have to worry about it. Alright, so like I said, the only thing you have to do to continue on from the other half down after you turn it over is just continue on like you were doing the figure eight the entire time on this side. So just bring it up and come around that bottom wire and go your 7 turns. So we'll wrap around 7 times and just continue on like nothing happened. But as mentioned before, you really do want to take your time and go back and check over your work continuously and make sure that that stone's properly fitting each time. The main reason why I am going from wrapping with you to wrapping off to the side of the video is more because I get a little sidetracked and confused as to my number placement than anything else. So to make it easier for both of us, I weave for a little bit and then I'll get off the camera. And that'll give you a chance to pause and catch up too, and take your time and check over your work without feeling rushed. So I guess it works out in that way. As you can see, I'm a little looser up here than I am down here, so I've got to bring this out just a little bit more, because this is going to work, but maybe a little bit tighter than I would like. So I need to loosen it up a little bit here. Not a whole lot. I don't want this giant difference. And even though there is a little bit of difference here, like it's noticeable to me, it's not too wavy or too noticeable. And once I get it onto the pendant, you probably won't notice it at all. I'll probably notice it because I was the one that made it. But somebody who's just looking at it with the intent of potentially taking it home is not really going to notice that. And if they do, they've got a doggone good eye. Because like I said, it's going to look a lot different once it's sitting on the stone and has all the other stuff going along with it. All right, so I'm going to keep weaving this, and I will be back with you when I get to the very end here. I should say, I'll be back when I get to the very end right here, and then show you how to get the bale started. Okay, so now I am to the point where I line up pretty good with that tape. So now we are going to set the stone down into the weave. But if you look at it here, there's no way for that stone to sit in there without it sliding out, because it has basically a ramp to go up either side. So we have to basically take our weave and push it down along here so that it has more of a trough to sit into instead of the ramps to go up and down. Now you can do that with your nails, another stone, a tool. I will use a coin as soon as I find one. Here we go. And to do that, all you have to do is take your coin and run it down along that weave. And like I said, that'll make a trough to hold your stone into. And I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time on the other side. But this time I'm going to go over it on both sides to make sure that both sides are pushed down equally to form a very nice well for that to sit down into. It is going to make your weave look a little crinkly that way, but once you get it on your stone, it's going to be just fine. Make sure my weaving wire is in the back. And what you're going to do is you're going to set your stone down inside of there and then wrap that weave down along it, holding it into place. Looks like I maybe put a little bit too much of a weave in there. So to remedy that, I'm going to kind of flail out those arms a little bit, and I'm just going to go ahead and take some of the weave off. I'll still be able to use this wire. I'll just have to be really careful with it, not to be too rough with it, because it's already been partially hardened with this wrap. So when I go to straighten it out a little bit and then use it again, it's going to work harden it even more, which can make it brittle if I'm not careful. I'm actually going to take the stone out of there for right now so I don't have to monkey with that. And just real gentle go back over that. That is if you made the same mistake I did. If you didn't, then just give me a second to catch up to you. And now very gently, I'm just going to take my fingers and go along that. I don't need it to be perfect. I just need it to be a little bit straighter. And I'll bring in the nylon pliers. I don't know, as you can tell, I'm not really squeezing down. It's just a real light running it against there. Because like I said, I do not want to over harden this and make it brittle. Just want it enough where I'll be able to work with it a little bit easier. So now we'll set the stone down in there. And like I said, this is a very slippery stone. Now it is actually holding in there quite nicely. But I still have to decide exactly how I am going to finish it off. And I think what I'm going to do is I will bring this arm down and around. I'm going to leave this here for now, and that will be a little bit of a decoration. This arm here I am going to bring down and around the back, but I'll wait until I get the bail made for that. And to do the bail, we're basically going to go back to working on that figure 8. And this here, actually, I said I was going to use this wire to lash in. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to lash this wire in down here. Like I said, I'm just going to let that sit for a minute where it's at until I'm ready for it. So I'm just going to kind of bend it down out of my way a little bit so it's not bothering me and I'm not crinkling it up any. Now for the bail, what I'm going to do is kind of make sure the bottom portion is brought together a little tighter. And then I'm going to flare it out. We're going to be using the figure 8 for this bail. Now the very first part of it is going to be relatively easy because we're going up, so we're not going to be fighting against the wire trying to slip off. But first I'm going to wrap it around both of them twice just to kind of hold them in place together real tight like that down at the bottom, and that'll help keep that stone set in there. And now I'm going to go ahead and start my figure 8, but this time instead of doing 7 I'm going to do 5. So there's 3, 4, and 5. Like I said, I want there to be a nice little V in there. You are going to want to bring in your nylon pliers and make sure that those are really nicely tucked together. And just keep going until you get, well, just keep going until you get right up to about in here, about an inch up, and then we'll start to curve it in. I'm going to take it over to the other side one more time and complete my 5 rounds over there. And then I'm going to bring it over to the other side. I'm only going to wrap it once for right now to hold it into place. And then I'm going to shape the rest of the bale just like this. So you're going to have like a diamond shape. And then I'll take the ends up where those 2 diamonds meet. I'll go ahead and bring in another plier. Right about there. And bend it down the other direction. So you have a diamond with the V at the end. And the V at the end is more to help you to be able to weave the rest of this. Now this is where it's going to get tricky. So you just really need to take your time, kind of hold that weave in place there. And continue on. So there's 3. And the reason why it's going to get a little harder is because as you go back down the wire is going to fight with you to slide down. Or I should say slide up. Either which way, it's going to try to slide. So it's not going to be up close to each other if you're not paying attention. So this one here, you're definitely going to have to go back through with almost every single switchback and check to make sure that it is exactly where it needs to be. As I said, this is probably the hardest part right here of all of this entire piece. So if you can get this down, you'll definitely be able to handle this. Slow and steady and patience. You'll get there just fine. I'm gonna put a little kink in that. There we go. I should say you also have to be careful not to do this part so tight that you're drawing this together sooner than it needs to be too. All right, so I'm down to the end of there. I am not going to trim this wire yet because I am going to be using it more. So now to complete the bail, what I'm going to do is I'll bend this forward just like that, probably about an 80 degrees angle there. And then normally I would use bail loop pliers for other types of bails, but for ones like this that are a little bit wider, I don't really want to have those arms in my way, like the arms of the pliers. So I'm just going to use this mandrel here and bring those arms back down there like that. Now you can bring them through to the front if you want to. You can wrap them around each other, but I'm going to use this outer one to wrap around and then these ones to stabilize that back a little bit more to make sure that nobody can push that through the back, which actually it feels like that's going to be just fine. I just want to be on the extra safe side. And that'll also help to stabilize the bail too when I do that. But first, before I wrap that other one around, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this weaving wire down a little bit further, down into about this area here, so I have it down further and it's not in the way of this one. And to do that, all I'm going to do is just keep coiling around, and I'm going to stay on that wire for now. Like I said, I just want to get it out of my way, but still have it available on the one wire. Now, as you can see, the front of this definitely loosened up some, so I'm going to lift this arm a little bit and kind of take and pull that through some and pull this through some just to help tighten up that front. The other side definitely came back through a little bit better, so give that just a nice tug. And now I'm going to take this real tight and I'm going to wrap it around that bail. And that'll help to tighten up the front, the back, and the bail. But like I said, I'm still going to bring this up and around and make a little bit of a decoration on the front just to make sure that it doesn't pop through. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And this here, I'm just going to leave that like that for now until I decide what I want to do with it next. Same with this wire here. Now for this wire, I don't want to do too much to the front. Like I said, this stone is extremely smooth, so it's very slippery. And I want to make sure there's no issues. So I think what I'll do is I'll bring this down and around and make a curl there. So I could bring it down here and go along that way, but I really like the swirls in the stone, and I kind of want to take the wire that I'm using and replicate that to complement it. I don't need a whole lot, just enough to give it a little extra swing, a little extra love. I'm gonna get out my rasp file and give this a real gentle smoothing on them edges just to be on the safe side, if I can get it in there. Alright, so now all I have to do is lash that front down and finish the back off. I'll probably use this wire to lash the back and then come down here and lash this part of the front. And I do not want this to have too much of a feminine look to it. So I'm trying to make a little bit more jewelry that can be more of a unisex. So I'm actually going to cut that off and tuck that in here in a little bit. But first I have got to take this wire and bring it down to over here so I can lash this in over here. Maybe I won't do that. All right, let's get this wire out of the way and go from there. I said I'm just going to bring this back down into the bail. Now it is out of the way and it's not going to catch on anything. It's not going to be too frilly. And this is going to lay flat, so that's nice too. And I can actually use this wire to come around and catch that when I get down a little bit further. Or I can bring this one on and do that. Yeah. I'm going to leave that little tail on for a minute because if I take it off now, it is just going to pull that wire through because there's not enough on it right now to hold it in place. So now I'm going to come through that weave. Without getting that extra arm. Now this is where having one of these little sewing tea needles in. They are very useful for kind of moving that weave around if you need to make a little extra space. I guess it helps if my wire's not all bent up also. There we go. I don't need to lash up here a whole lot. I just want to make sure that it is anchored well. So I'm just going to go around this twice, and then I'm going to go back over to the back. Ow. And that will be enough because it's already stitched in over here too. I just kind of want to give it that tension. But you do not have to if you do not want to. And now this is going to have to go because now it's poking me. I don't like it. Now this arm here, I think I'm going to end it up in here. So move that off to the side, for at least I think so. You do not have to coil this if you don't want to. I'm just doing that so that I have a little bit extra wire to attach where I need to attach it to without having to add it in. Although this wire here is short enough, I should probably go ahead and end the wrap sooner than later, especially since it looks like I'm making it messy here and there. I am going to take this off for right now, but I'm not going to take the arm off. So I have the option of strapping it in down here if need be. My goal is to get down here to attach that there. But I don't think I am going to do any more coils there either. The back is not where the main decoration is, it's just where I want to add a little bit extra stability. I'm going to go ahead and end this up here. Honestly, I think the hardest part about these pendants, maybe not the hardest part, but the most time-consuming part would be finishing it up. And trying to make it look neat and orderly. Basically putting the finished touches on. And making sure that everything is stable. Well, that is definitely arguing with me on going through there. Push that down some. There we go. Oh, it doesn't want to go back through there. Okay, I'm going to go this way. Now, I have heard some wire wrappers say that adding these braces in here and there makes it look unprofessional. And I don't know, maybe to some people that is the case. But honestly, I think having a piece fall apart or a stone fall apart because you didn't go that extra mile to tighten something in. Looks far more unprofessional. At least that's how I look at it. And this here can come off now because that's getting in my way too. I really got to get back down in through there. I'll do it this way. All right, so now the only part I have to worry about is this part here and this part here. So I'm going to lash this down right about in here. And then bring the wire back and attach back here. Drive that wedge now so I don't have to do it here a little bit later. Now to lash this on, I'm actually using the figure 8 stitch again. If I can get the wire in there again. You don't have to do the figure 8 if you don't want to. I just like to kind of continue on with that theme. Which I would normally do it a little further up and everything. I was just having a little bit too difficult of a time back there before I got smart and figured out how to do it the way I wanted to do it. But nobody's perfect. And believe it or not, yes, I have made these before. It seems like every single time I make them, because they're a little bit different each time, there's always something that I have to stop and think about. It's the only part that's muscle memory is the weaving itself. And that's about it. But I guess at least I know that each piece is definitely going to be unique in all its own. Alright, so now that I have that around there, I'm not going to go around that again. And I'm going to go ahead and bring both of these wires back through to the back. So I can get that back done. Really did not plan on bringing it through that curl just yet. So I'm going to open that up and bring that out of there. Maybe. Now first I'm going to finish this wire off by going down the opposite direction of this back wire here. You don't have to do too many coils. I like to do between 3 and 5. That's probably overkill, but as I mentioned before, I would rather something have that little extra to prevent it from falling apart than trying to be too minimalist and having a weak piece just for visual effect. Right, so that side's done. I'm gonna be honest, that doesn't normally work for me. Get that wire tucked in. All right, so now to finish off this side. This one's a little easier because all I have to do is wrap it around that curl. Like go under and around. I don't have to try to scooch in between anything else. So there is our finished back. Very neat and orderly, but definitely secure. And then this is our friend. Once again, very secure. There's not too much going on. It's not too frilly. It lets the stone stand out and do its thing. Once again, it's very durable, and that bail is large enough that you can slide different types of closures through there so that you can change out the cord if need be. And it lays flat. So now we have our red Imperial Jasper done with an upper beginner to a lower intermediate wire weave. And next week I think I will be working on some more earrings. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week and happy crafting. I hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye.